Okay, I'm joined by Geena Santiago. Sorry, Geena. Jeff Ryan, Arrielle, Cimino, Matt Perusse, and Christoper O'Connel, the makers and actors behind the new film Mass Hysteria. So this film is set in Salem on Halloween, and it centers around Paige, who's a young actress about to leave for her big break in New York. And in the middle of her reenactment of the Salem trials, she seems to curse one of the members of the audience, and he drops down dead. And things get sort of weirder from that point onwards. So I just want to ask how this particular project came together to begin with. So Christoper, you were one of the co-writers on this.
Yeah, that's right. And the creative process definitely began with Jeff, Arrielle, and I. We had made one movie together before with Matt and Geena as well. And we were looking for our next idea. And our first movie was really related to things we were very familiar with. And now the second movie, we were, what do we want to do that we know? And Salem is, we all went to college very nearby Salem, and it's been connected to all of our lives in certain ways. And so we knew this town, we knew people who have acted in these actual acting troupes. And we were just like, how do we make this funny? And then the horror kind of came later when we realized that the story would be done justice with a little bit of horror mixed in with the comedy that we usually do. And it's a town we love, and that's kind of where it started. We like to poke fun at things we love.
Well, there is this sort of dichotomy, isn't there, with a town like Salem and its sort of love-hate relationship with the tourists, basically. It's very much its sort of lifeblood, but at the same time, if you're actually living in there, it must be pretty horrendous at times.
Exactly. And Matt, did you someone actually lived there for a little bit, right? Like through Halloween? Jeff did, yes.
I didn't live through Halloween, so I'm not, but one thing that was very funny to us was we filmed in August, which, spoiler, it wasn't Halloween.
In fact, it was
one of the funniest
hot.
things, it was very hot. We were sweating the whole time. And one of the funniest parts about filming during that month, though, is that the town gave us such a hard time because everyone in the town is like, we put up with Halloween, so don't F with us any other month. So filming was you're cut off at 11 p.m. And I was like, our film takes place at night. What are we going to do? And so it was funny because you're right. You hit the nail on the head. It's the town actually is financed pretty much entirely by Halloween in the month of October, yet they kind of despise it. And I mean, they also love it because it is an experience. If you've never been, it's amazing.
I wanted to introduce
in a terrifying way.
Luke Deerdorf is here with me too. He's one of the actors as well. He was just had to step out for a second, but he's here as well.
Hi, Luke.
Hi. And Luke he lived in Salem for many years and was a teacher in the public school systems for Salem. So much experience with the crazy Salem
October
traffic.
So I just want to sort of mention there's a bit in the film where Paige, she's sole set up for this new job, and then she gets a bit of bad news sort of early on. I mean, is this sort of like an element of truth to that particular sort of thing? Is this sort of something which actors sort of tend to go through a lot, where you're sort of set up for a job, you think you've got it in the bag, and then all of a sudden it's sort of pulled from out of you?
Yeah, all the time.
I mean, every day. My God, it's it never gets better. It's always bad.
Yeah. Not until you're actually on set.
Actually, especially now with COVID, there's a lot of productions that will hire and then delay or just not go through at all. So yeah, Paige only got a little taste of what the future holds.
Absolutely. So you mentioned sort of the issues of sort of shooting around sort of Salem. Is there anything in particular that sort of stood out as a challenge in making the film?
Oh, a lot of things, Mike. When we sort of were pitching the film early on, we said we want to do it for a certain budget. And everyone that was in the know said, you guys are crazy. You can never do it for that budget. And so we ended up doing it for 1/8 of that budget. Wow. And so with that came a lot of favors. There's a lot of favors with that film, whether it was actors and locations and costumes and prop, every single thing. And so we were on such a tight budget and such a tight schedule, asking a lot of people for their time, and always in the back of our minds we knew something could go really wrong, like that favor of letting us shoot at a certain location for 4 nights. After the first night, maybe they'll never let us back. Hopefully they will. There was a lot of that. That's what I think of when I think of the stress of right. Shooting that.
Having to rely on that sort of faith and goodwill, basically.
Oh, absolutely. It was every time there was a multiple day location. Yeah. After the first day, we would just look at each other and be like, are they ever going to let us back? Do you think we can get back tomorrow? And we would show up the next day like, hey.
Oh, dear. Matt, just want to ask you about your characters. You play Samuel Hale in the film. He's kind of the not exactly the instigator, but he's definitely a catalyst in everything that happens. And he's quite a sort of meaty character in his dialogue. I mean, was there any sort of particular influence that you were sort of drawing from for that character?
That's a great question, Mike. As the part was originally written, it was sort of this like street preacher, grungy hair, kind of, exactly what you picture. And sort of thinking about it, it was like, well, he's kind of a leader, almost like a cult leader, and people that are sort of cult leaders are a little bit more slick. They're a little bit more in control, especially today. And I think that's what makes them a little bit more dangerous. And so that sort of, I said, what would a modern day person look like? Who, and I think you're right, he wasn't the instigator, but he saw the opportunity and he poured gasoline all over that fire.
Yeah, he's definitely an opportunist. That's what it is.
Yeah, so sort of like Benny Hinn, like a sort of televangelist meets sort of power guru, like Anthony Robbins, sort of that combination. That's sort of where I looked.
Yeah, he's like one step away from his own sort of TV channel, and
that's exactly
right.
Exactly.
Yep. Probably has one.
Right.
Yeah, he probably does. Yeah, it's just jobbing on the street for Halloween. So the concept that the film sort of centers around is this idea of mass hysteria, this sort of the public being whipped up into a particular way of thinking and sort of turned into a mob, basically. It's not quite stripped from the headlines, but it's almost just like a step removed, isn't it? I mean, so where did this sort of the idea for this come from, for that sort of element?
Well, we were very inspired by this idea of kind of like a zombie-like group of people that just kind of caused chaos wherever they went, but obviously with a very fixated purpose to get this one person, and whoever was associated with her. And the idea of them being sick was kind of like, obviously it's an element of the story that I won't spoil for anyone, but we thought that was kind of like a fun way, inspired by other movies that have done in the past. Taking that kind of like zombie feeling and applying it to a group of tourists that kind of are like insects that kind of just they're everywhere.
There's quite a few, nice little sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Homages, is that the right word I'm thinking of? There's a few nice little Easter eggs and things sort of hidden in there. There's a great little one for Mad Max Fury Road. It's sort of in the middle of the film, which I really liked. But there's this awesome opening sequence where Paige is on the phone trying to get in touch with her agent, and it's like a one-shot take of her sort of walking along and sort of coming across all these different sort of superstitious elements, and it sort of really reminded me of sort of work of like Edgar Wright in sort of Shaun of the Dead and Baby Driver. That sort of really, because it's all about timing, isn't it? I mean, was that how many takes did it take you to get that finished?
Well, I think we did 24 or something.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a lot. It honestly was. I don't think any of us thought it was going to take that long. I mean, and we did it was that our first day?
First day.
That was
Yeah.
cool.
It was such a bad choice. It was such a bad choice.
First day.
Oh my gosh, it was so stupid. It was just like the first day. It's like, oh, here's like one of the most complicated shots in the movie, but you don't think it's going to be hard because you're just like, oh, well, it's just like a tracking shot and a few moving elements.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it was definitely taken from like Edgar Wright or tons of movies that do like an amazing oneer, but I think the Cornetto trilogy always has like some oneer of some sort. I know Shaun of the Dead's is like probably the most memorable and probably one of the best used oneers ever.
Yeah, it was quite amusing because when I first watched it, I thought that was really cool. And I'm thinking, how many mirrors did they break? Watching doing this, and then when I saw it the second time, I realised actually you don't see it break, you just hear it break. And I thought, okay, just mirror up and smash it. But it is a brilliant piece of timing, especially when sort of Matt has to come in with his line of dialogue at the end. It just looks really, really cool. Really enjoyed it. One other sort of cast member I want to mention, who isn't here, is Robert D. Murphy. I'm just sort of wondering about his casting because he looks almost identical to Don Knotts with his sort of, with the big eyes. And I wonder if that's why he was casted. I think he looks like that guy, So maybe because he plays that sort of. Well, he's the policeman in the town, and at first he's the sort of voice of reason, and then things happen, obviously. But I was watching him thinking, I wonder if they hired him just because, for that reason, because he looks that sort of character. But,
he actually is an actor who lives in the town next door to Salem in Beverly, Mass. And he auditioned for us, and it was just, he kind of brought things out of the script that we didn't even think were that funny. And he made them like kind of eerie, like because of his face and the way with the big eyes, it really made him like something was a little off, even though at the beginning he's like all hunky-dory and like it's Salem, whatever. So he was a great character to put all that foreshadowing on.
There is a lot of foreshadowing in the film, obviously. Jeff, your character, for example, gets some very sort of choice lines at the beginning when he's sort of going, you deserve everything you get at the beginning. As an audience member, you're sort of going, I wonder if that means anything.
Especially because he says it like that, too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Is it any more suspicious? You deserve everything you get.
So the film's got quite a few sort of practical effects in it as well. Although thinking back to it now, I'm thinking, is it a case of did I imagine seeing stuff, or and it's just sound effects and a bit of spray of blood, but but it works really, really well. So I think it's a case of like you think you've seen more than you actually have. I mean, so how was the sort of special effects department for you?
I think, I mean, when that's part of the conversation we were having with people was they were like, you have car chases, you have like, heads getting cut and like lots of violence and things like that. And I think that was part of what we were excited about, because the challenge of making a movie for like no money in that style is so much more challenging, because obviously, practical effects are very hard. We actually, A huge shout out to, what's the name of the shop? Rob Shop in Salem. What was that shop called?
Oh my
Salem
goodness.
Parlor, Magic Parlor.
Yes, the Magic
Parlor. Rob was he was a special effects person in Boston for all like the major movies, and he just helped us so much for nothing. And just basically we walked into his shop one day, we're like, oh my god, like how do we do this? And then we had two amazing visual effects people, Sarah Mann and Olivia Gabois. How do you say her last name? Gabois. And those two did an incredible job for nothing. And they just, but yeah, in terms of your question, it's a lot of everything. We had an amazing sound mixing team that kind of took what we did as like our initial cut and amplified everything so that it just didn't distract you as much when you see like a cheaper prosthetic or, you know, a dummy that's like a totally different, like, so like the dummy in the movie we used was a burned dummy from what's the movie, The Patriot or something?
No, it was a Bruce Willis movie, Surrogates, from the movie Surrogates.
So the dummy is literally like
Bruce Willis, tarred Bruce Willis body that we got to run over with a car, which was wonderful.
So you've got the best Bruce Willis performance in your team.
Yeah, we should special thanks Bruce Willis actually.
We should have put him in the credits.
It's kind of like the Michael Myers mask being made out of William Shatner's face, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Need to keep using it. I think this would be really cool.
Right.
We did say that. We said after we have to make this a runner.
Yeah. I just want to sort of finish one. I think it'd be very remiss of me not to mention the food scene in the film. I'm sure you've had lots of comments about this already because it's pretty gross, guys. Come on, it really is.
Actually, Mike, you're the first to mention it.
You're the first
Really?
one.
I'm
You're
surprised.
the first one. You know what's funny too?
It's gross, but it's so well edited. You know, it really is. Sort of the way that I think there's one moment where one of the guys is sort of like starting to throw up, and it's intercut with somebody putting the sauce on their burrito at the same time. You know, brilliant editing, I have to say. But yeah, it's stomach churning sort of scene. So I mean, how did that scene come about? Was that originally scripted, or is that sort of came out in editing? Or?
That was such a fun scene to see as a writer because like we kind of knew that we wanted that, and Jeff and Arrielle were very adamant about this scene that it would be a very quick, and you know, as a writer, you're like, okay, like scene. Luke chokes on burrito, scene, you know, cheerleader dies, you know, like you're like I don't know how they're gonna do this at all. And then when you see it for the first time, it was so like Luke choking, and then Geena, her little like dab of the lips, like so clean and proper, and it was a really like, it was something that the directors knew was going to work, but as a writer you're like, all right, well, here it goes, like good luck.
I would say, Jeff, you should probably talk the most about this because you have a fascination with bodily fluids.
You do.
Like that is you think it's so
You were so insistent on me like chewing with my mouth open, and I like refused. I couldn't do it. It was like, you can't make me.
This is the fight Geena and I had the entire shooting process. I was like, Geena, just trust me. Like, be really gross with it. Like chew disgusting. And I mean, this entire scene was really funny because it was something that Arrielle and I like were on the same page with, that no one else was kind of on the same page with at first. And we were like, and I could say this with full confidence because like there's so many times where I'm like, guys, just trust me. Like this scene's gonna be awesome. And then everyone's like, that scene sucks. We should cut it. But this one, and like Dave, Dave Schachter's our main editor, and Dave and I would cut it together. And this scene in particular, Dave was like, I don't get this scene. And I was like, Dave, trust me, this is so good. And I cut a really crappy version of it, and Dave definitely like put his magic touch afterwards.
God. I just got one final question actually, and this is something I've been meaning to ask people who sort of dual directed, shall we say. So Ryan and Arrielle, this is for you. How do you co-direct a film? I mean, how do you sort of decide who's going to be filming what?
Mm-hmm. A lot of things we approached together, but there was certainly things that suited each one of us better, and I think the fact that we could trust each other and were able to say, you know what, like there are certain sequences that like the eating sequence, that's Jeff, like that's got Jeff's name written all over it because it is very stylized, very emphasizes the camera a lot and is really having like that editor's mind as well while filming it. And that's something that Jeff excels at extraordinarily. Like that is something that is not as much my forte. The things that I love is finding the funny in the scene, adding those quirks to those characters. I love directing Jeff. And so it was great to be able to have Jeff out there in front of the camera as well. And I learned a lot from Jeff. And I think that I'll let Jeff, take over from here. But it's kind of like, you have to have that kind of relationship that's almost like sibling-like, where it's like, no matter what we fight about, we're going to figure out a way to solve it.
Sure.
We're going to be okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, there's a reason people don't do it because it is really hard. It's and it's hard. I think the hardest thing is it's harder for the cast and crew sometimes than it is for like Arrielle and I, because Arrielle and I could like fight about what we want to do with the scene, and we know that we're just trying to get the problem solved. But when it comes to like cast and crew, like we have to be on such a same page so that when a camera operator comes up to us like, what do we want for this, they'll get the same answer from both of us. So, and that's something we're trying to learn how to do more and more, every time, because we did it last time and we didn't really know as much what we were doing. And this time, we kind of tried to split responsibility, and it worked pretty well for the most part. This was just a really hard shoot, and like emotions were so high all the time for everyone because people were working full-time jobs, and then after work coming to set at like 7 p.m. and then staying up until 5 a.m. And it was just like so demanding for people. And it was, and that's like, we're just so grateful that the film's getting out there because truly like the best way you can honor those people giving up that time is to put a movie out there and say like, this is the work you did. And I think
absolutely
everyone's really pumped about that. And yeah, working with Arrielle is amazing. And as an actor, I think every actor who works with Arrielle probably will be like, this is the greatest gift ever, because you feel so free to fail. And I think Geena could probably speak to that the best, but it's just, for me, I get self-conscious, and having someone who you trust completely that, like no matter how many people are around you looking, they have your best interest at heart is truly, it's like a gift. So.
Sure. So just one more question for Geena then, to finish off with. Obviously, you've worked with sort of Jeff and Arrielle before on the previous film, Youth Men. But this time you're definitely sort of more in the forefront of the film. Sort of you're carrying a lot of it. How was it having them as your directors for this? Did that sort of make the process a bit easier for you, sort of taking on a bigger role?
Yeah, no, they, as a team, they do a really good job of splitting the jobs. Of Arrielle was someone that I could go to for character development as far as why the character needed to do something, just like the emotional side of it. Meanwhile, Jeff can tell me, like, especially for the first scene where I'm walking, that had to do a lot with Jeff, where we had to like break down steps, like you're going to take about 10 paces, you're going to go under the ladder. And that was like all Jeff. And he was like, you have to keep this much distance between you and the camera. Don't mess it up.
And you're like, what should I do emotionally? I'm like, I don't care.
I don't care. Just get it done. So it was usually
your agent. You're just talking to your agent on the phone.
Like, what's my motivation, Jeff?
Brilliant.
Oh man.
Okay, guys, that is all my questions for you. Thank you for your time this afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, so Mass Hysteria is being released when exactly? Next week?
October
1st.
First.
Okay, so October 1st.
That's when I'm getting married, Geena.
Yeah.
being released by the Horror Collective on October 1st. Brilliant. Look out for it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Mike.
Like,